Happy St. Patrick's Day. Can you see Molly? She's in her green shirt. She's going to listen, hopefully. Okay? Stay tuned. Okay, so I think we're at the part where, let me think. Klaus. I don't really remember. Do you guys remember? The last part I read was, Klaus went over to the window and looked down at the ground. It's so high up, he said, you must have been terrified. Oh, okay. So here we are. It was very scary, she admitted, but not as scary as the thought of marrying Count Olaf. I'm sorry your invention didn't work, Klaus said sadly. The invention worked fine, Violet said, rubbing her sore shoulder. I just got caught, and now we're doomed. The hook-handed man said he'd keep us here until tonight, and then it's the marvelous marriage. Do you think we could invent something that would help us escape? Klaus asked, looking around the room. Maybe, Violet said. And why don't you go through those papers and books? Perhaps there's some information that could be of use. For the next few hours, Violet and Klaus searched the room in their own minds for anything that might help them. Violet looked for objects that she could invent something with. Klaus read through Count Olaf's papers and books, and from time to time they would go over to Sunny and smile at her and pat her head to reassure her. Occasionally Violet and Klaus would speak to each other, but mostly they were silent, lost in their own thoughts. If we had any kerosene, Violet said around noon, I could make some Molotov cocktails with these bottles. No, we're not going to do that. They were silent for the next several hours. Then they were silent for several more hours. We could break these bottles in half, Violet said, use them as knives, but I'm afraid Count Olaf's troupe would overpower us. You could say I don't instead of I do, Klaus said, but I'm afraid Count Olaf would order Sunny dropped off the tower. I certainly would, Count Olaf said, and the children jumped. They had been so involved in their conversation that they hadn't heard him come up the stairs and open the door. He was wearing a fancy suit and his eyebrow had been waxed so it looked as shiny as his eyes. Behind him stood the hook-handed man who smiled and waved a hook at the youngsters. Come, orphans, Count Olaf said. It is time for the big event. My associate here will stay behind in this room, and we will keep in constant contact through our walkie-talkies. If anything goes wrong during tonight's performance, your sister will be dropped. Come along now. There's Molly. She decided to come back. Violet and Klaus looked at each other and then at Sunny, still dangling in her cage, and followed Count Olaf out the door. As Klaus walked down the tower stairs, he felt a heavy sinking in his heart as all hope left him. There truly seemed to be no way out of their predicament. Violet was feeling the same way until she reached out with her right hand to grasp the banister for balance. She looked at her right hand for a second and began to think. All the way down the stairs and out the door, and the short walk down the block to the theater, Violet thought and thought and thought harder than she had in her entire life. So she's probably thinking of something. She's probably inventing something. So look at this picture. Can you see it? Can you tell that's Count Olaf? He's getting ready for the play. So I will continue tomorrow. Oh, excuse me. Tomorrow I'm starting chapter 12, and there's only 12 and 13 left. And then that's it. Look, tiny little bit left. So, is the wedding really going to happen? Think about it. And hopefully you're doing some reading at home. I hope. All right. Have a good day and happy St. Patrick's Day. Goodbye.